Are we, as a society, able to cope without forests and timber? Have you ever wondered how much work is needed to grow a seed into a seedling, a tree, a forest, and then into timber? It doesn't just happen, but it needs people to happen. People professionally associated with the forest, but also forest enthusiasts. From seed to timber. There are such fragments of the forest and there are such trees whose lives we would like to extend so that they would please our eyes and the eyes of our children. However, due to the fact that these forests are so valuable to us, the seeds are twice as valuable. The harvesting of such seeds is carried out in a very unusual way. We harvest cones only in winter. There are also Douglas fir cones that we collect at the end of summer, but these are really very small amounts. But I and most of my colleagues just work with trees. I have never had the courage or time to think, reflect, give a straight answer why I do it, because there are many aspects that indicate that I shouldn't. Profit versus risk is not expected. The only thing that prevails is that here I decide everything myself, that I see what others cannot see. Even when I try to make films and photos from the crown of a tree, then when I watch them, I conclude that it doesn't reflect what I see. The forest from above is really different. Sometimes kilometers of forest are visible, sometimes it is such a beautiful landscape as here, Missouri, sometimes the sea. This is what I envy myself. I hardly enjoyed my first jobs in companies that dealt with production or other things. And here something different happens each day. I meet different people every time. Foresters, wonderful people.
A tu jest właśnie za każdym razem coś innego. Za każdym razem spotykam innych ludzi, leśnicy, wspaniali ludzie.
Oh, not too many cones. Such a year. Cones are different. Anyway, have a look at them. And this one? Last year's one? Yes, you can see that it's in much worse condition. The touch of time is already visible on it. And this is this year's one, but it didn't develop seeds and opened much earlier, maybe because of drought. So it's useless for us. Well, should it really open in April? It's not about time or date, it's about temperature. If the temperature is around 20 degrees Celsius for a long time, the cones will start to open, and such cones will be like these ones. Seeds extracted from the cones are sown in a nursery. In about 2 weeks, we'll be able to observe the first sprouts. And in 2 years' time, they will go to a forest as seedlings.
co hodujemy sadzonki w szkółkach?
Why do we grow seedlings in
Najbardziej
nurseries?
oczekujemy odnowienia
What we
naturalnego w
expect the
lesie.
most is the forest
Ale
natural
czasami jest tak,
regeneration, but
że zostanie
sometimes it will be
zniszczone przez
destroyed by
zwierzynę.
wild animals,
Czasami
sometimes
przez
by
zalegającą
heavy snow,
pokrywę śniegu.
and then people have to come to the
No i wtedy
rescue.
z pomocą musi przyjść człowiek.
Czarek, I guess that the hottest period of nursery work is already behind you. Exactly. What has happened in the last month? We gave out nearly 750,000 seedlings to the state forest units, plus retail sale, because people also need different species for their gardens. And to be honest, I have never experienced anything like spring at a nursery. The weather plays a very important role in a nursery. You have to monitor and keep an eye on everything. This is completely different from the work in a forest. I must admit that at the beginning I had some concerns about what it would look like. I only had theoretical knowledge of this subject, but here came the practice and I came at peak work time. Gradually, with every passing week, I got to know the job and I tried to do it as well as possible. Soon we'll start spring sowing. Pine, spruce, and probably larch. It only remains for me to wish you good luck. Thank you. A container nursery is a small factory where seedlings are produced while the work is mechanized. Despite the fact that all systems are mechanized here, people are still needed. Seedlings are produced here in such special pots called cassettes.
Sadzonki produkowane są tutaj w takich specjalnych doniczkach zwanych kasetami.
In such a pot there is a mycorrhiza. Symbiosis with the fungus allows the seedling to survive in difficult conditions and acclimatize to the forest soil. Such kind of nurseries cover approximately 10% of the demand for seedlings in the state forests. We have 18 such nurseries across the country. The seedlings are produced in an annual system, which means that after a year they are ready to be planted. The container type of production was initiated in the state forests after the greatest disasters. The seedling from the container nursery, thanks to the lump of roots, was able to cope with difficult soil conditions. For 35 years I was a forester and nurseryman. Initially, the ground nursery consisted of 3 plots 100 meters from us, behind the forest. The nursery was underinvested, ordinary quarters with no water, no electricity. We only had what came from the sky. At the moment, about 4 million seedlings are produced annually. Previously, we were producing around 2 million in this ground nursery. And in completely different conditions. In completely different conditions, because in the ground nursery, this production cycle lasted 2 to 3 years. 2 years from sowing, 3 years in nursery. If necessary, it took even 4 years to nurse the oak, because the trees didn't produce seeds every year. You had to have a supply of seedlings. There was no seed this year. Yes. Most of the sowing was done by hand, while conifers such as pine, spruce and larch were sown with a drill seeder. But these drills were so imprecise that you had to adjust and change them several times an hour, and they were always out of adjustment. So it was also a nuisance and difficult. In Western Europe, in Scandinavia, container nurseries were already being built and seedlings with a closed root system were being produced. We travelled a bit later to the west. We saw how it all works, and the idea was that such nurseries would also be established in Poland.
No i powstała koncepcja, że również u nas w Polsce takie szkółki mają powstać. Jak się
When we have been recently shuffling these papers from those years, we could see how much work was put in by these people and by us, so that these forests could function as they should and be planted with good planting material. The works are seasonal. The forest wakes up, the forest freezes. In spring we plant the forest, in winter we cut it down, and in summer we take care of it. Just as one cares for a small child, we must take care of a young forest. You have to nurture, put your heart and health in such a way that it grows. The forest pays us back. After some years, when walking through this forest, you will look. Yes, I used to work here, and I planted 10, 15, 20 years ago, and now there is a beautiful, nice tree stand. Now we have a forest planting period. At the beginning of the year, I cut the forest, and now I plant it. Probably when the spring period begins, in May, we will cultivate the crops. That is, mow, clean or prune. The forest is just too big, too dense, and you need to thin it out. These are such maintenance works. There is some interference, you know. We cut the forest, we plant it, but we are doing nothing against nature. A huge area to be reforested. Yes, it is quite a large area. It could be compared to 5 football fields. How long ago was this forest cut down? 2 years ago. And there was no natural regeneration? No, there was no natural regeneration in this part of the forest, so we had to plant it all by hand. There are deciduous, coniferous and fruit trees here. And in that part, which is fenced, there are fruit trees in that part. The fence is made so that the game cannot chew on these trees at this stage. Later, when they
Później,
grow
jak
up,
one już
they
wyrosną,
bear fruit.
dadzą
The fence will be
owoce,
removed, and the
grodzenie
game will
zostanie
then be able to
zdjęte
use that
i
part of
zwierzyna
the
będzie
forest.
mogła wtedy korzystać z tamtego fragmentu lasu.
So how long will it take these trees to grow? You have to count somewhere around 15 to 20 years, so that they start to bear fruit, that they grow to such a height that game will not be able to chew them, and at the same time to take advantage of all those apples that will fall. Yes. How many seedlings do you have in this area? We have planted 26,000 trees on the entire surface. Oh look, here it is, poorly trampled. Does it matter? Yes, it must be well trampled so that this root in the ground touches the ground, that there is no free space there, because then it'll dry out. Do you, for example, after cutting the forest, have surfaces where you notice that this natural regeneration does occur? Yes, I have such fragments of the forest. They are mostly deciduous species such as beech, hornbeam and birch. Such species regenerate naturally through sowing. And that's when it is also used, right? Yes, we use it then. We leave such fragments of the forest and plant other species of trees to these fragments. For example, they can be conifers. The whole area reminds me a little bit of a garden. Plowed land belts, seedlings planted evenly in rows.
Powierzchnia jest zaorana, dlatego że
This surface is plowed because it's easier for the planters.
jest dla osób sadzących. Potem
Then
ze
because of
względu
the
na
maintenance,
pielęgnację, bo te drzewa
because the trees grow up
wyrastając,
and then they
one potem
start to
zaczną się
touch
ze
each
sobą
other.
stykać.
They will
Zrobią
create a
cień,
shadow and the grass
przez
doesn't
to
grow.
nie rozwija się trawa,
It doesn't
nie
drown them
zagłusza.
out.
Nie trzeba będzie tak
It
pielęgnować
won't be necessary to
i
cultivate and mow
wykaszać
it,
tego. Bo jakbyśmy pozostawili to
because if we
niekoszone,
left it
to
unmown,
te
the weeds will
trawy, chwasty
overgrow
zarosną
these
te
trees
drzewa
and then
i wtedy je
dominate
dominują.
them.
A tutaj mamy las, który
And
rośnie
here we
bez
have a
jakiejkolwiek
forest that
ingerencji
grows without
człowieka.
any human
Ma
interference.
niewątpliwe walory
It has
przyrodnicze i
unquestionable
estetyczne,
natural and
ale dobrej
aesthetic
jakości drewna
values,
z niego nie
but we
uzyskamy.
cannot obtain good quality wood from it.
W ciągu całego życia lasu wykonuje
Throughout the
się
life
szereg
of a
zabiegów
forest, a
pielęgnacyjnych.
number of stand
Najczęściej
improvements are
polegają one
performed.
na tym, że usuwa się
Most often
drzewa
they consist
chore,
in
wadliwe,
removing
źle
sick,
ukształtowane,
defective,
te,
badly
które
shaped
zabierają
trees,
światło, a
those that
pozostawia
take
te,
light
które
and
są
leave them behind those
najlepsze
that are
i
promising
rokują
for the
nam na
future.
przyszłość. Leśnicy gospodarują lasami w
Foresters
imieniu
manage
państwa
forests on
i w imieniu
behalf of the state and
społeczeństwa.
society,
A nasza
and our
gospodarka
economy
opiera
is
się
mainly
głównie
based
na
on wood
obrocie
trading.
drewnem.
Brutally
Brutalnie
speaking,
mówiąc,
in a few
to, co
dozen years
sadzimy,
we will have
za
to harvest
kilkadziesiąt
what we
lat
are planting
będziemy
now.
musieli wyciąć.
But
Ale nie
don't
martwcie
worry,
się,
this
to
is
jest
a really
naprawdę
big
wielka
ecological
ekologiczna
factory.
fabryka. Możemy w tej chwili obserwować pracę
We can now
maszyny
observe the work of a
wielooperacyjnej.
multi-purpose machine.
Praca
The
maszyny
operation of the
może
machine
pełnić
can
różne
perform
funkcje.
various
W
functions.
zależności od tego, ile
Depending
lat
on
ma
how
las,
old the forest is,
pewne cięcia
certain cuts are
są
cuts that
cięciami,
care for this
które nam
forest.
ten las pielęgnują. Wtedy
Then
usuwa się
sick and
drzewa
damaged trees are
chore,
removed, those that do not
uszkodzone,
bode well
takie,
for
które
the
nie
future.
rokują na przyszłość.
Znajdujemy się na powierzchni
We are on a
roboczej.
working
Wyjmujemy
surface.
tutaj
Here we
drzewa,
log
które
trees endowed
natura
by nature
obdarzyła
with
słabszym
weaker growth.
przyrostem.
We
Pozyskujemy
obtain
z
raw
nich
material from them,
surowiec, ale również
but we also
rozluźniamy
decimate this area a
troszeczkę
little
teren, żeby
so that the
jednak
trees
te
that
drzewa,
remain
które
would have
pozostaną,
more of
żeby
the
miały
food that they feed on,
więcej tego pokarmu, którym się żywią, żeby był
that there would be growth.
przyrost. Po mnie później jedzie
Later,
kolejna
another
maszyna,
machine
potem
goes after
również
me,
samym szlaku
also along the
i zrywa
same
to
trail,
drewno do
and
drogi,
picks up the
tak
timber
aby
to the
auta
road so that the trucks take it out of the
jadące
way.
po te drzewo
Because,
wychodziły
you know,
je
they won't
z
drive
drogi,
into the
bo
forest,
wiadomo,
they
na las
can't.
nie wjadą, nie mogą. Kiedyś tradycyjnie
Traditionally,
pilarz
in the past,
podszedłby
a
do
lumberjack
takiego
would approach
drzewa,
such a
ściął
tree,
je
cut it down,
i
and
tam,
where
gdzie
it was
ściął,
cut,
tam
cut
pociął
it
na
into a
dany
given
asortyment.
assortment.
Ciągnik
The
musiałby do
tractor
tego
would have to
samego
drive
drzewa
up to the same tree.
podjechać. Dociągamy drzewo do
We
szlaku.
bring the tree to the trail,
Nie
we
wjeżdżamy
don't
na
enter the
las.
forest, we leave it to
Zostawiamy
nature.
przyrodzie. Tą pracę,
The
którą ja
work that I
wykonuję
do
na
in
Trzebieży,
clearing,
bardzo
very
niebezpieczna,
thankless,
ciężka
dangerous and
praca.
heavy work,
Tutaj jesteśmy
we
na
are on the
powierzchni,
surface,
która
which is a total
łącznie,
of several
to jest
hectares.
kilkanaście hektarów. Mi to zajmie
It'll take me a week or two to drive the stand, while it would take about a month or two for 2 lumberjacks.
Dwóm pilarzom zajęłoby to około miesiąca, dwóch. Przy takim pozyskaniu ja
With such extraction,
nie dość,
I not
że
only do more and more
robię więcej,
economically, but also
ekonomiczniej,
reduce the amount of exhaust
to jest
gas
też
and carbon
mniejsza
dioxide
ilość
emission to the
spalin
environment.
dwutlenku węgla do środowiska.
Ile drzew wycina pan dziennie?
How many trees do you cut a day?
To też zależy,
It depends
jakie
what
drzewa
trees
się
are cut.
ścina. Jak grubsze, no
If
to
thicker,
tak
I
myślę,
think 30 to 40 trees during 7 or 8 hours.
7-8 godzin.
For example,
30,
pine
40,
trees.
Tak jak na przykład sosen.
A jak wygląda przygotowanie drzewa do ściny?
And how does the preparation of a tree for
Muszę
cutting look
podejść,
like?
obejrzeć, w którym kierunku
I have to come
drzewo
up, see in
będzie
which direction this tree
obalane.
will be felled.
No, muszę
I have to
obserwować
debark the
piasek,
stump
bo tam jest
because
dużo
there is a lot of
piasku,
sand there,
żeby
so
nie
as not to
tępić
blunt the
łańcucha.
saw chain.
No i wtedy rozejrzeć się, czy nie ma nikogo.
I would look around to see if there are any people, if some mushroom picker is walking, because safety
Przede
is the
wszystkim
first thing.
bezpieczeństwo, tak? I dopiero wtedy taka
And
drzewo
only then,
ścina.
after making sure that no one is around,
Nie ma
I cut the tree.
Łatwiej się ścina na przykład sosnę
Which one
czy
is
buka?
easier to cut? For example, pine or beech?
Raz, że Bóg jest
Pine.
twardy.
First, the beech is harder and its branches are dangling, and many of them are dry, so that they may fall off later on.
Mogą później spaść.
Also, dry birch trees are very dangerous.
No, może gdzieś nieraz
Somewhere,
uderzy i
it will
się
hit and break
złamie.
more than once, and it may kick back.
Miałem kiedyś taką, no już nie jedną
I used to
zresztą
have one,
historię.
well, more than one
Lisek taki
story.
mały
A little
podchodził
fox
do mnie.
came up to
To ja
me.
do niego,
As
to
I
on
tried
pod
to
samochód
approach him,
przechował.
he was
Taka
hiding
fajna to
under
była
the car.
sytuacja.
It was such
I
a
wreszcie
cool
gdzieś
situation.
uciekł.
He finally
No,
ran away
ostatnio
somewhere.
też przyjechałem
Recently, I
na
also came to the
powierzchnię.
site. I got out of the car,
Wysiadłem z
I
samochodu,
looked, and a wolf was standing on the
patrzę, a na
line
linii
and watched me for a
wilk
moment.
stoi
But he
i
looked
tak
at
mnie
me
obserwował.
and disappeared
Ale tak
in an
chwilę na
unknown
mnie
direction.
popatrzył i zginął, tak nie wiadomo kiedy, gdzieś poszedł.
Przebywanie na takiej powierzchni naprawdę
Staying on
jest
such a
niebezpieczne.
surface is really dangerous.
osoby,
That's why
które
people who are
nie
not
są
related
związane
to
w
the
żaden
forest in
sposób z
any way
lasem,
are practically forbidden
praktycznie
to
mają
enter.
zakaz wejścia na taką powierzchnię. A ci,
And those who
którzy
work
tutaj
here should be
pracują,
protected as I am
powinni
at
być
the
tak
moment.
zabezpieczeni jak ja w tej chwili, czyli
That
mieć
is,
na
wear a
głowie
helmet
kask
and a
i
warning
kamizelkę
vest,
ostrzegawczą, żeby
so that the
operator
operator of the
maszyny
machine knows
dokładnie
exactly
wiedział,
how many
ile
people he can
osób
see.
w zasięgu jego wzroku się znajduje. Jakie
What an
ciekawe
interesting
miejsce.
place. You can
Jak na
clearly
dłoni
see the
widać
change of
przemianę pokoleń w
generations in the
lesie.
forest.
Pomimo tego, że
Despite the
stoję na
fact that I
zrębie,
am standing on a
dookoła
clear-cutting
otaczają mnie
area,
drzewa w różnym
I am
wieku.
surrounded by trees of different ages. In our forest language, the name clear-cutting means the place where all the trees are logged. When walking in the forest, you may be displeased with such an area, but the pine dominates here, and it needs light to grow, and here the light is in abundance. It grows in the poorest habitats that were unsuitable for agricultural production. In more fertile soils, where possible, we foresters plant other species so as to increase the diversity of our forests.
Zobaczcie,
Look,
tutaj
here we are
stoimy
standing
na
in a
uprawie.
second growth forest.
Za mną jest
Behind me is a
młodnik,
young
jest
forest.
starodrzew.
There is an old
Miejsca,
forest.
w którym został
We
wycięty
always
las,
plant young trees
zawsze
in places
obsadzany
where the
młodymi
forest was
drzewkami.
cleared. One of the basic functions of forest management is the production of timber. Although foresters produce timber, they also protect the most valuable nature areas. One of them is the old Polish yew reserve in Wierzchlas. You will not see such a place close to your home. It is a wilderness where the yew population is the oldest in Poland. The oldest trees are 500 years old. This is a regression position. Only human activity through active protection gives a chance to save this site. Save this gene pool and lift this yew outside the park. Where are the seedlings? Here we have seedlings, such an example of a few years old seedling. As a general rule, such seedlings die in the reserve after a few years due to poor light access. This yew is already growing successfully in places other than here in the reserve. These are the so-called ex situ cultivations, that is, outside the reserve, outside the parent stand, outside their place of origin. Yes, outside the place of origin. And this gives us new areas where the yew occurs, spreads this species to another area. We want to bring the yew to such a point where the yew will be so numerous in our country that it will be taken out of protection. That is, it will be possible to see this yew not only here in Wierzchlas, but also in other parts of Poland or in other forest districts. Article 8 of the Forest Act says, forest management shall be carried out according to the following principles. 1. Universal protection of forests. 2. The sustainability of forest maintenance. 3. Continuity and sustainable use of all forest functions. 4. Increasing forest resources. This means that we manage forests in such a way as to reconcile the needs of people using forest resources without harming nature. Foresters have been planting trees for generations and for future generations, and timber has always been used. However, this timber will go to your homes in various forms. Timber is an ecological material that is made of soil, sun, and water. Having a choice between wooden and a plastic chair requires a lot of effort, while a wooden one was produced by nature itself. When we get bored with a plastic chair, we throw it into the garbage and it decomposes for hundreds of years, while a wooden one can return into circulation again. I make shepherd instruments of Podhala. Here is a bagpipe head made of wavy sycamore with beautiful rings on the wood. We also use the wavy sycamore for the bottom plates of the violin, due to the beautiful wood pattern. Elm is the so-called mountain elm. The structure of the wood is a bit like ash. A beautiful species of wood, very hard. Here I have a very nice kind of wood. It's a black oak. After processing, it looks like ebony after sanding. Beautiful wood. I am just trying to make some elements of bagpipes from it, to show the beauty of our wood, not African. We have a lot of valuable species that must be appreciated, because it's a renewable source of construction and carpentry materials. And wood can be used for many other things, and luckily it grows back all the time. A beautiful place. Large, small, tall, low, young, old, coniferous, deciduous trees. It's great to rest here. We foresters work here, but you can completely do different things. Ride a bike, run, listen to the birds, pick mushrooms. Each of us has such a forest near our home.
Dziękuję.